Hey, good afternoon to you. It's now 5:07 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, we'll talk to the executive producer of this show, Corey and Ganamort, at 5:30. Get his recap on the past few years, whether he thinks we did anything meaningful at all. I'll have to ask Corey about that coming up. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The left's money machine is called Act Blue. And they brought in a lot of money, billions upon billions of dollars through the years. Mostly from mysterious sources, though. Very unclear how they make all this money. And sometimes you have people who were told, hey, you contributed to Act Blue. And they said, I did. I never gave any money. Well, your name was used. And now all of a sudden that organization seems to be falling apart. All of its leaders jumping off of the ship. The New York Times reporting that they're in internal chaos right now, although not a lot of clear answers about what provoked that chaos. Joining us now is Mark Hemingway. He's a senior writer at Real Clear Investigations, and he's been digging into Act Blue for quite a while. Mark, good to have you on the show, sir.
Hey, glad to be back.
Act Blue. Tell me what is going on with this group right now, and maybe start with just how powerful it is to begin with.
Well, as you mentioned, they're responsible for raising, billions of dollars. They were one of the first big online fundraising groups. In fact, they've raised more than $16 billion in the 20 or so years that they've been around for Democrats and progressive causes. And they're kind of the undisputed biggest online fundraising platform for politics in any event. So they're tremendously influential. And there have been various disputes between campaigns and Act Blue over the years about who gets what percentage of the money that's raised and things like that. But the bottom line is they're so powerful and they're such a force for helping elect Democrats that any sort of chaos at Act Blue, and it looks like there's a lot of it right now, is going to be a huge headache for them. And this New York Times report this morning that 7 senior leaders have left the organization very recently is pretty ominous.
Yes. Yeah, it is kind of ominous. So these are all high-level staffers. What I noticed in the New York Times reporting is that none of them want to talk to the New York Times. The Times is reaching out to them, and they're not answering phone calls. They're not answering text messages, which seems kind of unusual to me, given that the New York Times is very cozy with a lot of these left-wing causes. There must be something worth hiding if you're not going to even tell the New York Times what's happening.
Well, yeah, that's exactly the question I think everybody's asking right now, because the New York Times report focuses almost exclusively on the organizational chaos. And it makes reference to this, but it doesn't really delve into it, which is kind of, irresponsible journalism, frankly. But there have been a lot of scandals surrounding Act Blue in recent years in terms of, if you go through Act Blue's records, there's thousands and thousands of reports of donations to to Act Blue that appear to be fraudulent, using fake addresses. People have all kinds of hundreds of donations from the same address from a person that denies they've ever made any donation to Act Blue. And it's a very specific problem. Act Blue has very specifically chosen not to do basic online credit card verification stuff, which has prompted some congressional scrutiny, and there's talk that there's going to be Republican congressional investigations into this. Marco Rubio, when he was in the Senate, was trying to pass legislation, and he couldn't get it to go anywhere in the Democratic-controlled Senate, that simply required Act Blue to use CVV verification, which is that little number in the back of your credit card. You're always required now to put whenever you buy anything online. Act Blue didn't require that, which is a key component of verifying a credit card. And it certainly looks like there could be a lot of fraud in this organization.
Sure, but even after they started requiring the CVV verification, they still didn't fix all the other ways that people could circumvent it, whether it was through things like Google Pay or Venmo or PayPal, or buying a gift card, for instance. Just going to a Walgreens and buying a MasterCard gift card. Act Blue sort of was comically vulnerable to people having ways to give money without any meaningful paper trail about where it came from.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And an important thing to highlight is like, for instance, WinRed, which is kind of the Republican version of Act Blue, did require all, the CVV number and did have much more sort of stringent requirements. And Act Blue was like, kind of out on a limb here doing this, and they've been doing it for a very long time in terms of having very lax security requirements. But like, this has been a problem on the left generally. There were major reports in 2008 and 2012 that the Obama campaign itself was foregoing a lot of these, address verification for credit cards and all these other things, and they were just getting away with it. It's really kind of amazing that it's taken 20 years of like basically extensive fraud funding Democratic campaigns for this to kind of come home to roost. But even now, again, we're not anywhere near accountability for Act Blue.
So, I mean, if I understand this right, this is like a payment processor on the left. They're just the vehicle through which this money is flowing. I mean, are there any legislative solutions here that maybe campaign funds shouldn't flow through some gigantic payment processor that is dedicated to political causes?
Right. Well, I mean, in theory, you have all kinds of, federal election laws that should be monitoring this sort of thing. Like, it's illegal if you're, say, a foreign citizen to give money to, a political campaign, but yet we know that's happening, and we know it's almost certainly happening through these, through Act Blue and payment processors like it. But the FEC isn't aggressively investigating into this. The FEC, a lot of what it does in fact, there was a case that I wrote about involving this Swiss billionaire named Hans-Jörg Wyss, who has been funding Democratic causes and has likely broken all kinds of laws. He's admitted to have broken laws in the past. Now the statute of limitations has expired in terms of funding Democrats, and the FEC has declined to basically investigate it on political grounds, more or less, because a certain number of the Federal Election Commission is appointed by Democrats, and they have the upper hand. There's all kinds of things that we could be doing. Like I said, Marco Rubio, for instance, had a law, who has been proposing requiring Act Blue to do CVV, credit card verification. There's a lot more that could be done legislatively as well, but this is not being investigated, and no one's being held accountable.
So is this in any way a cause for celebration on the right that Act Blue seems to be in all this turmoil? Should conservatives be encouraged by this? What do you expect?
Well, that is, I don't know if, I mean, they should, we should encourage any time that, that justice looks like it's starting to be done here. And again, nothing has really been done here, and nothing has really been exposed at Act Blue. But it is also true that Act Blue, because, they got in the game earlier and they were very good at establishing dominance in the online fundraising space before a lot of conservative groups did, and they had a lot of sway and the ability to raise a lot more money from grassroots Democrats. And so that for many years was providing a big political advantage. However, there's an interesting thing that's happened in recent years, and Patrick Ruffini, who's kind of an interesting pollster and political data analyst, has a great report on a Substack today about how by getting so heavily and dependent on online fundraising from their most activist members, that effectively pushed the politics of the Democratic Party further left than was good for them electorally. And so getting away, the people that donate money to Act Blue and online stuff, they tend to be more affluent and they tend to be a lot more liberal than, ordinary blue collar folk, right, who might be, considering donating to a campaign. So, this might end up being a corrective, both in terms of justice and, helping moderate the Democratic Party.
And that goes to a report we saw recently that Democrats huddled in Loudoun County recently. And we're talking about a lot of this, and one of the groups that they blamed for why they're losing is that they've become more dependent, supposedly, on small dollar donors. To your point, and that maybe they should disassociate themselves from small dollar donors because it's just making the party too radical.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly the case, but that has a lot to do with how they get small dollar donors to organizations like Act Blue, which are extremely progressive and focused on very progressive causes that gin up excitement among a narrow activist base. There's probably a way to do online fundraising that catches a much wider net in terms of, getting, ordinary people like union members and things that were once a big part of the Democratic coalition back involved in Democratic politics. But as long as the Democratic Party is perceived as being this radical and disenthralled to the kind of progressive activists that have been running Act Blue, then they're going to be sort of behind where they need to be.
Yeah. No, they that meeting produced a lot of other takeaways that were kind of interesting. They're trying to push back against far left staffers and groups that exert disproportionate influence on policy and messaging. And like, in other words, instead of getting away from the working class messaging that they need to get out of elite circles and into places like tailgates, gun shows, local restaurants, and churches. And they need to own up to the failures of democratic governance in large cities and commit to improving local government. I guess the good news for guys like you and me, Mark, is that I don't see Democrats doing any of this anytime soon.
Well, so what's an interesting part of this New York Times report about Act Blue's implosion is that it involves all this tension between management and the union that runs Act Blue, which is insane. It's like not that large an organization. But like all these democratic organizations themselves have become dysfunctional because of the progressive politics that they're touting, right? They're staffed exclusively by activists who are, themselves far left and skewing the priorities of the organization itself. And when that organization is responsible for raising $16 billion and it's a bunch of, union infighting and other things like that, obviously it's going to be like grossly out of touch with what's going on. Whereas, it used to be Democrats would go to, an actual union hall where people work for a living, doing, actual jobs where, a union might be, difficult jobs where a union might be warranted and passing the hat around to raise money. Whereas, this is just a bunch of, rich, Ivy League kids play acting at political organizing, and it's a complete disaster.
It happens everywhere, doesn't it? It's like Facebook. It happens. New York Times, Washington Post, the SPLC. I mean, there's like a million examples of where you have these lefties who are really paralyzing time bombs, these left-wing activists inside of your organization, and then eventually it just overtakes the group and it just crushes it from within, which is amazing. The revolution constantly eating its own on the left. Thank you, Mark Hemingway. I always appreciate our conversations. Please have a very good weekend, sir.
You too. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Mark Hemingway, Real Clear Investigations. It's an unfortunate and kind of, definitely sad update from the death of Gene Hackman. Just in the last hour or so, some new information coming out. The New York Times says that the actor Gene Hackman died from heart disease at his home in New Mexico, most likely a week after his wife, Betsy Arakawa, died from the effects of hantavirus, which is a disease that's linked to rodents that can cause respiratory failure in rare cases. Oh, so sounds like his wife died a week ahead of him, and yet he was in the home. Now, they describe Hackman as having, quote, severe Alzheimer's, so he may not have been, with it enough to really embrace what he was dealing with. And they said the report today was that the medical examiner determined that his stomach was empty. He didn't have any food in his stomach. So I guess it sounds like she passed away a week ahead of him. And he was just there in the house at 95 years old with severe Alzheimer's. Just really, really sad series of events, but more information as to why the circumstances looked like that, as suspicious as they were. More information seems to be coming out about it now. So just an update on that out of Santa Fe, New Mexico. Let's see. I've got Gail in Alexandria calling in on line 6. I believe this is Rapper Gail calling in right now. Hello, Rapper Gail.
Hello, Vince, and you are so right. You are so right.
I'm glad.
So, are you ready for this one?
No way. Okay. Yeah. Lay it on me.
Okay. Oh, my goodness. It is true. Dan Bongino has chosen you. You on the air to take his place. You on the air to continue this race. You are insightful. You are so smart. You tell the truth with lots of heart. When it's the truth we want to hear, we listen to you and give a big cheer. Corey, you're not left behind. Another needs your talents. All will be fine. So bundles of good luck are coming to you from old and new listeners to Corey, Jim, and Jeff too. Yahoo, 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 'cause Dan Bongino has chosen you. Chosen you. Dan Bongino has chosen you. Congratulations, Vince.
Wow.
We love you.
Wow. That is something else. Thank you. Yeah, you put some work into that today.
Of course. Absolutely. You're the best.
And Gail, is
you.
it true that I think we talked about this. Did you cheer when you were younger? Were you a cheerleader?
No.
No, not a cheerleader. That sounded like kind of a cheer.
No, just from a big family. So yeah, you get your own in a big family.
I love
family, but definitely not a cheerleader.
And you use these skills with your family, right? This is a big thing at family gatherings. You write these raps.
Yeah, I will just call them up on their birthday and rap on the phone, and they hear it one time, and that's the end of it. And I was just rapping at lunch the other day, and something occurs to me, and I just start rapping, and you hear it one time, and that's the end. So yours is written down. You're really lucky. I've written 3 for you, so yeah.
So you normally freestyle these things, is what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
They just come to me, and different rhythms, different topics, different. But it's fun. I mean, it's really fun. And I shared with Corey when I saw you guys at CPAC. You all are so good looking. Oh my gosh, so talented and so good looking.
Wow, that's nice. So you say Corey's really good looking. That's really sweet of you to say that.
Oh, all of you are.
All of us. Thank you, Gail. Well, you're so sweet and so talented. Thank you for just putting in the effort to make all of those words rhyme to tell us about how great we are. Thank you, Gail. That was really nice.
My pleasure. Take care. Good luck. Looking forward to the new show.
Thank you, Gail. That's fun. That's cool. Right? Isn't it cool just anybody spends any time thinking about you? They're like, all right, I'm going to write something down. I like it. Gail's got the hots for Corey. She loves him. All right, coming up, we'll talk to Corey. We'll find out what he thought these last 3+ years have been like here on the Vince Coglianese Show. He's got a breakdown of it. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's now 5:35. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today. 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. For over 3 years now, this show has had an executive producer by the name of Corey and Ganamort, who joined us from a long run at the Washington Nationals, kind of running a lot of the fan experience for the stadium there, but specifically, much of that time was spent in costume as Screech the Eagle. And then he decided one day, he's like, you know what? I want to work in radio, and showed up at our offices and did an interview with me. I was at the time in desperate need of a producer because my first producer here on the afternoon show, Jen Richer, who's a wonderful woman, she moved on to some other job in radio, and she's super successful and amazing. And I was like, okay, we got to find somebody. And Corey and Ganamore shows up at our office, and he fresh off of his time with the Washington Nationals, and said, I don't know anything about the radio business other than I enjoy listening to it, but I'm willing to learn everything, and I'm a hard worker. And I believed him, and thank God, thank God I did. Corey and Ganamore on the microphone today for your last show. Corey is producer of this program.
Can't believe it. Can you hear me, by the way, Vince?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, great. I wasn't sure about the microphone I set up. It's been 3+ years now. It just absolutely flew by. I can't believe the time that we've had. You're talking about the time I interviewed you in the office. I always laugh at that because the first impression I made is always funny to me because it was the day before Halloween I had an interview with you. First time meeting you, and I grew out this big, giant, disgusting, dirty mustache because I was Mike Lindell for Halloween at a party the next day.
Uh-huh.
And I was toying for so long. Do I shave it? Do I not? Do I shave it? Do I not? I was like, screw it. You know what? I'm just going to show up with this dirty mustache. And it didn't turn you away. I was like, okay, Bill, Vince, this is what I am. I'm a little bit of a lunatic, but I'm ready to work hard. And boy, I think we had a successful run. It's been a blast.
It has been a blast. So Corey's just a good life lesson for everybody else, which is like, hey, just put in the work. You know, sometimes you jump into something that you don't know what to do, but like if you work hard, you really can climb that mountain. And he definitely did. And the cool thing about you, Corey, is like you get along with everybody. So developing the relationships that are necessary to be a good producer, it comes easy to you, which is good. And being able to like cut the audio and all that stuff, you just learn that really quickly, which has been an immense help to me. It's honestly, I can't even believe that you came here. I think that's divine that you came to this show.
Well, I would say, yeah, I knew a few people from my old job at the Nationals. I got to know a few media people just based on what kind of cool job it was. I had a whole bunch of free tickets, and I met some media personalities and some celebrities via like first pitches and national anthems, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
I started with a very small Rolodex, a few people I leaned on in the very beginning. Emily Jashinsky, for example, comes to example, Katie Pavlich. I text them early on and was like, hey, can you come on? And I told Emily, you saved my life the first month working here because I really didn't know what to do. I think it was my second day, you're saying, hey, can you get Governor Scott Walker on the show tomorrow? And I said, sure, but I had no idea what to do with that information. Okay, that's not something anyone off the street would normally know what to do. So I texted a friend who knew a friend who knew a friend who
That's the
knew
key.
Scott Walker. And then,
That's the key.
I tell you what, the first month, Vince, I don't think I ate lunch because I didn't have time to. It was a sprint. It was a sprint to get to the start of the show.
Yeah.
But since then, oh my God, it's become so much easier because yes, I am a good guest booker, but the reason why I am a good guest booker is because there's something I'm selling. I'm selling Vince Coglianese. When I put, hey, do you want to join the Vince Coglianese show in an email or in a text, guests are always like, hell yeah, I want to join Vince. He's the greatest radio show host there is. And the latest promotion is proof of that. So I don't know how many guests that I talked to in person or over the phone. Mike Davis, for example, the other day I ran into him and he said, every time I'm on Vince's show, I get so many more requests to join other shows on Fox News or other radio. And that's just another example of that. People listen to this show, whether it be lawmakers or, media personalities, producers, and B, people want to be on this show because we have actual influence.
Yes, I'm happy to take some of the glory of some of that, but it is a WMAL phenomenon, I have to say, because I remember years ago, before I was a host on this station, over 8 years ago, I'd appear as a guest on the morning show from time to time, and when I did, I got feedback for those appearances way beyond anything that I had done in national media. I would be on Fox News and I'd get some limited feedback. People would see me, mostly, faraway friends and family members. I saw you on Fox. Nothing like WMAL. The WMAL audience is so engaged and so present. It's kind of amazing. And I get so many messages. Oh, I heard you on WMAL this morning. It is cool. And that's why, it's such a neat thing. I always call it the legendary WMAL because it really is. And you talk to, you and I, we go to these listener events, and you talk to people who are longtime listeners of WMAL who want to talk about, like Hardin and Weaver and kind of the storied history of this station. You do realize that you're a part of something very big, and that you don't even really have your full arms around how big it is sometimes. So it is neat. Corey, in addition to your workman-like ethic, you just have a great work ethic here. One of the things I've enjoyed through these couple years is just how I always call you like one of the most belligerent white dudes I know, which is really fun because you just have all these crazy stories of like being a conservative and being totally unashamed of it, living in Arlington, and Corey gets into battles with neighbors in his building. He's getting in battles in the elevator. He's getting in battles at polling places. He's getting in battles while he's floating on the Potomac in his boat. It's like there's like nonstop battles, and it's all for his own enjoyment. He just does it because he loves doing it, and I think it's the funniest thing ever.
I promise you, and you know this, and I think the listener knows this, I'm not an angry guy. I swear I'm not an angry guy. But I do get joy out of being, the 7% who voted for Donald Trump in the Washington, D.C. area. I do get enjoy. It used to really annoy me being around all of these people. But especially in this job, we've become so close. Everyone who is like-minded and in the media space and in, conservative politics, we kind of grow that circle where they become your best friends. And it is so much more fun to be in this area with that big group of friends.
Right.
It's like us against the world. And you've heard stories, and obviously, Vince, you've experienced it. Our rides on the Potomac with the big Trump flag next year, by the way. Announcement, breaking news. Next year, the flag is going to be bigger than last year. It's going to be a 12 by 8 foot flag, and it's actually going to be a face of Tom Homan. with the words that say "Ice, Ice, Baby" on the side. So I think that's going to trigger some people. But I do get so much enjoyment. If we were doing this on a lake in, I don't know, Mississippi, among a whole bunch of like-minded people, I don't think that would be nearly as fun. I get a lot of fun out of it.
I want people to understand what he means by what he's actually doing. It's not just that you're floating on the Potomac with a Trump flag, and this year it's the Tom Homan flag. And you left out one detail. He'll also have the Thug Life sunglasses on.
Yes, that's an important detail.
That's an important detail, which is great. Ice, Ice, Baby, a picture of Tom Homan with these awesome sunglasses on. And with a bigger flag, what Corey does with this boat is he will bring it right up against the shoreline at places like the Wharf, right up against Georgetown, right up against each of these locations that like people are absolutely buzzing. They're at outdoor bars, they're socializing. There's maybe weddings going on sometimes. And there comes Corey blasting Lee Greenwood, and he's got this gigantic flag up. It is, again, as I said, he's belligerent in the best way possible. And normally what happens is when you do this, then we put the cameras on and we capture the reactions from the shoreline. And to be fair, they're mixed. It's not always middle fingers. Sometimes it's outright cheering.
Yeah, there was a lot of that this year. I could almost tell the tide was changing just by my little sample size of the boat. But you're right, we get the attention, and it's not just driving by; it's honking the horns and making sure that they see us. And we just had such a blast. I have a new hobby actually. I picked up last night, Vince. I didn't even tell you this, but as far as trolling and trying to get attention. On social media, on X or on Facebook, you get like a lot of liberals and conservatives interacting with each other. What you don't get that on LinkedIn, by the way. On LinkedIn, you have one corporate policy which is allowed, and that is gender-affirming care, so-called, aka neutering children, is promoted and it's allowed, and you can talk about it openly. And not a single person has the opposite view because this is corporate America. So what I started doing last night, it's a new hobby of mine. I recommend it. It's actually kind of fun. Log into your LinkedIn profile, search the word trans, and find all the people who are speaking in pro support of neutering children in the name of gender-affirming care, and just click on the hold down the like button, but hit laugh. And laugh on all of these, and you'll notice that you are literally the only person out of like 1,000 likes who actually hit the laugh button, because in corporate America, you're not allowed to do that. And all these people that are on LinkedIn are looking for their next job, looking to be employed, worried about being canceled. So I recommend doing that on LinkedIn. It is actually fantastically fun.
And they can tell it was you who did it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Good. And I go ahead. Tell my employer I'm proud of it. It's absolutely fine.
Really funny. Okay, so you are headed off. So here's I mentioned this before, but I just want people to understand that this puts me in a much better situation than I would have been otherwise, because Corey had planned this out some time ago. He was going to head off to Town Hall. He's going to work for them. And it just so happened that all of the changes that we're making to the programming here at MAL, and that I'm going to be taking over Dan Bongino's 12 to 3 slot nationwide, that is a total coincidence to the fact that Corey's also leaving. And that means that nobody needs to get canned. Like, we don't have to, there's nobody getting fired. I'm going to go work with Jim and Mike with Dan's show. It's great. And so thank you for saving me from being put into a very uncomfortable position one way or the other. And I'll just let you forever think about, like, who would he have fired in that arrangement? You can just keep that to yourself. But you are going to Town Hall, right? So does that mean that you're going to work with Larry O'Connor in some capacity?
Oh, boy, yes, I will. Actually, he said on Twitter today, he said, "Oh, my God, Corey, we're going to miss you so much at WMAL." And I said, "Yes, I'm going to miss you so much, but I'll see you next week." I will be seeing Larry quite often. That relationship will continue. I know a whole bunch of those guys over there at Town Hall already, frequent guests on the Vince Coglianese show, Kurt Schlichter. And it's owned by Salem, which, of course, includes Hot Air. So David Strom, who you heard from earlier, Ed Morrissey, Jennifer Van Laar over at Red State. So I'm going to get to hang out with a lot of the people that I already know, a lot of people that I'm always friends with. It's going to be a smooth transition. I'm going to be doing a lot of the business side of things, managing VIP memberships, tracking the data, but also doing a little bit of editing, a little bit of podcast management. It's a little vague until I start on Monday, but I'm looking forward to it. But As I told you earlier, Vince, like I'm going to end up being the Corey from Arlington caller. I do plan on still having a role in this show, and
I can't wait.
I'll call often as probably, well, maybe not as often as Donna in Frederick or Phil in Fredericksburg or Sam in Alexandria or Mike in Gainesville, who, by the way, I've become friends with all these guys, and Leo in Colorado, and I just want to give you all a shout out because we had so many great conversations over the phone over the past few years. So I'm going to miss you, the caller or guest, Vince, but I'm going to still be involved, and I'm staying in the fight.
So two things. On callers, Corey's a great call screener. And that's not like a reflexively easy job. It's actually, there's a challenge to it because what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a symphony on the air. You're trying to drive people through who are going to help improve the quality of the on-air product because in the end, fundamentally, I've got to make decisions about what are we putting on at any given time so we can make this the best sounding thing you could possibly listen to. And so Corey's really good because Corey will do the pre-interview, he'll talk to the people who are calling in, he'll ask them all the questions, so sort of kick the tires to make sure they've even thought through their argument. Sometimes we get calls that are like, hey, I just want to get on the air. And Corey's like, well, what do you want to talk about? I don't care. And it's like, well, you have to have a topic. There's got to be something specifically. So Corey's been very good at all of that through the years. So another skill of yours. And because we're about running up against it now, I do want to tell you one quick story. It was funny. I was talking to my wife earlier this week about, man, Corey's leaving. Like, what can we do for Corey? Because I want to just do something to celebrate that you're leaving. And my first idea, because I thought it was just really funny, I was like, we should name a star after him. Those like, I'm pretty sure those are scam websites that are like, oh, you named a star. And
adopt an elephant in Africa. Why don't you, Vince?
And then I was like, actually, what if we name a star after his boat? We'll call it the No Woke Zone. We'll just name a random star. And then when he's out on the water at night, he can look up at the sky and say, like, there's a No Woke Zone star. And that, by the way, that costs like $20 or something to name a star. It's actually way cheaper than you realize.
It still sounds like a ripoff to me, though.
It is a ripoff. Yeah, somebody just stole $20 from you, and you're not getting any sort of actual benefit. So what we settled on is we're going to go out to a very fancy dinner. It's going to be a lot more than $20, and we're going to have a great time. And Corey, I got to say, it has been such a joy working with you. You're a total talent. You really grew into this role literally instantly, and that month you had without eating lunch really paid off because you just became a total star. Totally jealous the town hall's picking you up, and I'm thoroughly convinced that we're going to work together in the future. So thank you for all the great work you've done.
Vince, it's been an absolute honor, an absolute pleasure. I'm just overwhelmed with all the love and support I've received today from you and Bill Hess and Dave Kimber, who's the man who's never behind the microphone, but I'm going to miss working with the three of you. This has been a team, the 3 to 6 team. The band is breaking up, but there's always seems to be a reunion tour, and who knows? So options are open down the road, Vince. I see ourselves working together somehow, some way in the future. Yeah. And I'm just incredibly grateful. Thanks, man. All right, yeah, and I trust me. I've got words to say about Dave Kimber. I got words to say about Anna. It's all coming too. But for now, thank you, Corey. Thank you, man. I still can't get over the fact that they gave Pencil Neck a podcast. The Pencil Neck podcast. That's what they should call it. That's a good one too, or the Shift Show, whatever you want to call it. Here he is attempting to be interesting.
We need to speak out. We need to be courageous. They come after me all the time. Elon Musk and Donald Trump, they call me a criminal. They call me a traitor. Their MAGA minions online come after me to try to intimidate me, to create fear. I'll tell you
because they're racist.
My response to that is screw you and the horse you rode in on. I hope that is your response too. We must not give in to this climate of fear. We are Americans. If our troops can face the bullets and the missiles and the dangers of combat, then sure enough, we can be courageous.
Oh my gosh!
At home,
he's so awful, isn't he? That whole line, "Screw you and the horse you rode in on." The horse that he rode in on is 77 million American voters. That's who Adam Schiff is saying "screw you" to, as usual. The guy's a jerk, actually. I'll be back with you next week. We bid adieu to Corey here, but we start the week off together, me and you. That'll be happening ahead of our March 17th launch of the Vince Show and the Vince Podcast. Got a lot to do. I hope you have a great weekend. The great one, Mark Levin, up next here on WMAL.